primary health care in the respective communities. The Prime Minister has articulated very well, as he is quite able to do and have demonstrated on education. And between access and the quality of access and the output, which we have seen from the pre-primary level through to the tertiary level, education under this government, including the no user fee policy, has been much improved. And I am convinced that there's no more value, even though we're prepared to listen to them and to consult with them, that the PNP's manifesto and the PNP's team could add to what this government is doing for the education system in Jamaica. I just give you an example. I mean, the Student Loan Bureau, which is criticized. We're criticized sometimes for not doing enough. More students, easier access, lower interest rates. In 2010-2011, the SLB dispersed 15% more loans, dispersed 31% more funds, processed 35% more applications, and dispersed an extra $100 million in terms of the new model to creating greater access to our Jamaicans who have the potential and have the talent and have demonstrated that commitment. Ladies and gentlemen, those are the 4 areas that I wanted to highlight. Clearly, there's a lot more to be said. But in conclusion, I think it is fair to say, and we encourage the Jamaican people as they consider their fate going beyond December 29th, beyond the hype, beyond the rhetoric, beyond the loose talk, there is enough evidence to draw a conclusion and to make an objective assessment as to what is in their best interest going forward. They have had, the PNP that is, 18.5 years. And the good thing about our 4 years, it has been relatively short. So hopefully people can remember not just the 4, but they can reflect back on the 18.5. Because there needs to be a point at which some comparisons are made. Macroeconomic stability, the Jamaica Labour Party has proven it in 4 years. Crime fighting and crime reduction, the evidence is there to show. Education and education attainment and access and quality, the evidence is there to show. Agriculture in terms of output and quality of output and eating more local, the evidence is there for sure. Healthcare and healthcare access, the evidence is there to show. And I could go on and on. But to conclude by saying the right choice, having considered the facts objectively, would have to be that the Jamaica Labour Party and this team deserves a second term. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister Tufton. And now as we come to the 3rd segment of the proceedings, let me set some rules. Please identify yourself by name when you're asking questions. Indicate your media house or other affiliation if you're not from the media. Given the time frame that we have left, I'm going to ask you to keep your questions focused and tight, and to indicate which of the persons at the head table you wish to ask the question. The time is limited, so I'm going to be limiting the questions in the remaining time that we have. Please therefore cooperate and let us get through this in very short order. We have to be out of here in about 10 or maximum 15 minutes. Yes?
Owen James, All Media Services Limited. We produce a number of programs for television. I want to ask, certainly in the next couple of months.
Who first, so that I can call? There's only one microphone. If you
I'm going to ask this of the Prime Minister.
Prime Minister.
Whoever wins the election will certainly have no honeymoon period. So in the first couple of months, Mr. Prime Minister, before the advent of the new fiscal year, what would you say would be the top 3 priorities of your administration? And secondly, I saw no mention of foreign policy initiatives in the manifesto.
Well, just take your first question.
Okay.
The first priority is to resolve our issues with the IMF, and that clearly means taxation reform, public sector efficiency reforms, and pension reforms as well. Critical, and I follow the numbers, and I pay attention to public opinion. Job creation, critically important. Minister Tufton has outlined some of the things that we are doing, and he has made it very clear what the JLP's approach is to job creation versus what the PMP's approach is to job creation. And I just want to reinforce that point, that we intend to create sustainable, gainful employment. And the only way to do that is through getting investments. And in doing that, the government will work closely with the private sector through the establishment of a clear policy of public-private partnerships that will see the private sector being the engine of growth of this country. And the third thing is that we have to continue the legislative and regulatory reforms that we have started, both in terms of dealing with corruption, improving the efficiency of the public sector, and just generally strengthening justice and laws in our country. So those are the 3 things that we have to deal with right away.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Prime Minister.
In terms of foreign policy.
Foreign policy.
Foreign policy is very important, and
Yes.
let me just quickly say to you that in my inauguration speech, I mentioned the prospecting agenda, which is something that we will develop further. But just to give you some insight, Jamaica must look to the entire world. Latin America and South America particularly has, in my opinion, great potential for trade and partnership. And I think Jamaica has to focus on our neighbors, which they are our neighbors. We have to focus on them. Clearly, language can be a challenge, but I believe we have the capacity here to overcome that. So you will see from this administration a government that is seeking the opportunities wherever they are. Clearly, we have to maintain our long-standing friendships and alliances, and Jamaica is already known for being an independent and respected voice in international affairs. But certainly, I believe there is a wide world out there that Jamaica needs to further explore.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. A quick question for Dr. Tufton. Some weeks ago, you mentioned
just before you proceed,
picking winners.
in relation to foreign affairs, may I invite your attention to pages 28 and 29 of the manifesto.
Okay.
And we do have a microphone up here, so if you indicate who you're asking, we can just pass the
Yeah.
microphone around.
This
Dr. Tufton.
question is for Dr. Tufton. Some weeks ago, you mentioned picking winners in terms of the development of the economy. Can you give a brief progress report on the winners you have selected? And also want to ask you a question. What assumptions has the government made in respect of the optimism about the exponential increase in hotel rooms, for example? What are the assumptions behind those numbers? Thank you.
Okay. First of all, I probably will yield to my colleague Ed Bartlett to speak to tourism. But as it relates to the picking winners terminology, in effect, the winners pick themselves. What we do is facilitate through government policy the enhancement of the opportunities and the advantages that we have identified based on what is going on in a more global context, but also based on the resources that we have, natural and otherwise. I mentioned a number of them earlier. I mentioned tourism and the big plans and the fact that casino gaming will be a great facilitator of that. That is an example of how you facilitate the build-out of a product of a product that is waiting on specific legislation to create an additional service. Beyond that, I spoke about mining, and in particular limestone mining. Clearly, we have to develop a roadmap to facilitate the expansion of that, and it involves several elements, and that roadmap is being developed as we speak between the two respective ministries and agencies. Spoke about ICT and our five-point plan. That five-point plan is in effect driven by JAMPRO. It's a legislation, it is financing. We launched a fund recently through PetroCaribe and DBJ for $2 billion to facilitate the build-out of ICT infrastructure. That again is the government trying to facilitate the expansion of quality infrastructure. We have done a marketing plan to segment the ICT market to not just go after the footloose investors, call centers, but look at the more quality entities that are looking to serve particular segments of the client market in North America. Look at their desires, what they require. They need a particular type of skill set, as a case in point. So we have gone ahead as a government, working with HEART, to create a training program, and we'll be launching a physical location in Montego Bay next year early, where we will build a training facility to train the workers who will be in demand for this type of service. So the government would have assessed what we have, look at what the market is looking for, and then using policy to develop a framework that would attract these critical investors. And those three areas are just three examples of that. I don't know if Minister Bartlett wants to.
Hi, Mr. Chairman. I'm just an interested observer. Having set out the macroeconomic parameters, will there be any attempt, covert or otherwise, to influence the free bargaining process?
Who are you asking that one? I can answer if you wish. Who are you directing the question to? Let me just restate the government's position quite clearly. That we have said it, and we are repeating it a number of times. We are committed to a free bargaining process in Jamaica. And contrary to murmuring I hear from the opposition out there, we have treated our public sector workers with respect. We are presently in negotiations. We have noised it abroad because we have an understanding that until we reach a certain point in our discussions, we'll keep it among us, government and union leaders. And we respect that process, and they have respected that process. And in due course, we'll make some announcements.
Morning, Elon Parkinson from CVM Television. To the Prime Minister, are you ruling out any form of, as part of the statist approach towards encouraging investment, are you ruling out any kind of equity investment on the part of government where attracting investors to Jamaica is concerned?
I don't know that the government has a statist approach. And I'm very cautious about those kinds of terminologies. The government is acting in two ways. One, as a facilitator, the other as a market maker. Where no markets exist, but the potential exists, the government brings all the players together, puts them at the table, and say, let's talk. Here are the opportunities, here's the potential. In terms of the facilitator, the government makes sure that once the investment decision is made, it moves quickly. The government will always retain where it sees an investment opportunity that the nation will benefit to put up equity. But we are going to be far more careful, much more frugal in how we use public funds at this time. The context in which government operates now is one where it must first of all seek to reduce its debt, manage its expenditure, and enhance its revenue. And I think that is the context that I think everyone should understand. But of course, if opportunities present themselves, we will take advantage of those.
Just to indicate that the line ends with